So my name is Dylan Bingham, and I am a second-year graduate student in the ASU's Social Justice and Human Rights program. And this first section is going to aim to contextualize water scarcity challenges facing Goodyear in the short and long term by focusing on drought, groundwater overdraft, and population growth.
Hi everyone, my name is McKenna Welsh. I am an undergrad student here at the School of Sustainability, and this is my last project as an undergrad, so I hope you all like it. And I'm going to be focusing on the conservation strategies that we're going to be recommending for residential use.
And hello everyone, I'm Sean McElroy. I'm a current junior at the School of Sustainability, and so my focus is the current conservation strategies that Goodyear is doing, and then also a conservation implementation plan that we create. And let's begin.
So drought is going to be a significant challenge as Goodyear grows on a regional and local scale. While the city is pursuing cap water, the Colorado River is being put under increasing stress. This is a consequence of things like warming temperatures, evaporation, variable rain, and snowfall. And it's kind of compounded by that 1922 compact that allocated the water between the 7 states. And basically, as it stands today, the Colorado River is flowing at the lowest since that compact. Things like Lake Mead and Lake Powell are halfway empty. And lastly, as shortages begin to occur, Arizona is going to be among the first to lose our allocation because of our junior water rights. And then when it comes to groundwater, the groundwater overdraft occurs when you take more water out of the aquifer than you're replacing. And this is one of the major reasons why cities throughout Arizona have been able to develop. It's problematic because the water in them is finite and they take a very long time to recharge. So as those water levels drop, it's going to become more expensive to drill wells, to pump out that water, and that water that you get is going to be lower quality and require costly treatment. So Goodyear's population is expected to grow to 760,000 by build-out in 2085. And consumer demand will exceed the roughly 13,000 acre-feet per year of groundwater extraction allowed between 2020 and 2025. This will mean that the city either will have to acquire a new water source or dramatically decrease its usage. And so the rest of our presentation will cover this latter option, where we hope to begin to address the demand side of water management and through things like stakeholder collaboration, water efficiency and technology, and then growing general conservation efforts.
All right, so then to go along with that, in order to come up with our conservation recommendations, we first analyze what Goodyear is currently doing as far as conservation. So one of the main things that they're doing is that they have an educational campaign. So they have conservation classes that they provide at the Public Works Administration buildings. They're free of charge and given about every 2 weeks. And then they also have a website that has landscaping practices and other resources for consumers. And then there's also the Water Conservation Committee, which is a committee that is advisory committee to the City Council. So they study the water use patterns, and then also they research conservation recommendations and other strategies that they can advise the City Council. And then there's also the curtailment plan, which was, the current plan is from 2008, but an updated version is planned to be completed around July 2008, so next year, which will include other strategies and then additions that are missing from the current plan. And as you can see from the graphic, they have 4 stages that include when the demand reaches a certain percent of supply, they will implement curtailment, and that will mean that they'll have to reduce their water use by certain restrictions that they implement. And the next one, McKenna will talk about our recommendations.
All right, so one of Goodyear's main conservation goals is to reduce residential water use. And so we thought that using HOAs as a tool to implement these water conservation strategies would be a good idea. This is especially important for Goodyear because 98% of the residents there live in HOA communities. So HOAs set regulations for each community, and these regulations are enforced through fines. One of the things that they have regulations for is yard appearance. So they set the standard for yard appearance. So those HOA communities that favor xeriscaping over green lawns are going to be more water conservative than those who don't. Xeriscaping doesn't just mean gravel and cacti. It's working with your microclimates in that area to add native plant species, drought-resistant species, using efficient watering techniques like drip irrigation or watering at the correct times of day. And it's difficult to say exactly how much water savings come from xeriscaping because each yard is going to be unique. It depends on the size of the yard, the plants chosen, and the climate. So one study in Nevada, though, homes that converted to xeriscaping use 33% less water than those who didn't. So there's some significant savings that could be found there. So 2 other big water users are private pools and washing your vehicle at home. So your average 400 square foot pool can waste over 19,000 gallons per year just to evaporation. So pool covers can prevent 95% of this evaporation from happening. So we were thinking another way HOAs could help is by requiring pool covers to be used. This is a little bit harder to manage because they are in people's backyards, so people don't want the HOA peeking over their walls, but we were thinking they could set up some type of agreement for having random inspections where, first they knock on the front door and say, okay, can we check to see if your pool cover is being used, something like that, where they're not spying into your backyard. And then a way to encourage these purchases could be through rebates. The Southern Nevada Water Authority offers rebates for purchasing pool covers. These range from $50 to $200 depending on which pool cover they need. And then washing your car at home, if people are using just a standard hose, this can waste up to 100 gallons for just a 10-minute car wash. So going to like a conveyor belt car wash, most of the time they only use about 30 to 50 gallons per car. So not only is this good for water conservation, but it's also better for the environment because they divert their waste and they also treat their water before sending it back into the sewage system, and a lot of them recycle some of the water that they use too. So we were thinking that HOAs could include a monthly car washing pass in their HOA fees. The one in Goodyear, there's monthly passes that start around $15 an hour, so when you consider how much you're paying for HOA fees, that's not a huge addition. And they could even work out a deal, maybe get this lower, which would be good for local business because they're going to be getting a lot of customers coming to their car wash. And then our last recommendation is high-density development. Low-density development results in a lot of impervious material, such as asphalt and concrete, which make it difficult for water to penetrate the ground and get back into those underground aquifers. So this is important for Goodyear because they rely heavily on groundwater for their water resources. So high-density development can conserve water because people will have smaller yard spaces, so less space to water. It also reserves natural land around these urban areas so that during storm runoff, rainfall, water can still get down into those aquifers. So besides the water conservation benefits, it also reduces congestion, which in turn reduces pollution. It can save money for just basic infrastructure like roads and sewage systems. And it increases walkability as well, which is good for residents' health and social well-being. So the EPA created the Sustainable Design and Green Building Toolkit, which this is a snapshot from, which is a cool tool for local governments and cities to use. You plug in your ordinances into the tool, and it shows you which ordinances are preventing or allowing sustainable development, and it can give you suggestions on how to change those depending on where the requirements come from, if it's state, country, local.
And then, so now that we've presented our recommendations, what we came up then is a conservation implementation plan. So basically a plan that has 5 phases over a 10-year period where the city would ideally implement these conservation strategies and then any other strategy that they come up with. So the first phase is preparation. So this would include interviewing expert home developers and also landscape architects. So finding those landscape architects and developers that are willing to work with Goodyear to create water or drought conscious communities. So working with those that are willing to work with them and not those that don't have the same vision as the city basically. And also focusing on future developments because as Dylan mentioned, there's going to be a lot of growth, a lot of people that are coming to Goodyear. They're playing for a lot of people, a lot of new developments and houses. So this is a unique opportunity to implement conservation strategies and other projects that they can try out. And then capacity is the second phase. So this would mean designing landscape design standards. The city of Santa Fe has a landscape design standard, which is basically a standard for landscaping practices, system components that the Water Conservation Committee can also recommend to the HOAs that they can implement across all their developments and have just a standard for landscaping. It would make it easier to also measure per cap or water use a little bit easier than just having different standards for each HOA. And also then the collaboration between the Water Conservation Committee and also the HOAs be beneficial. And so our third phase then is community mobilization. So this would mean mobilizing the community to adopt these different strategies and measures. So one of these we'll suggest is education, which already the city has with their website and also the conservation classes. So those can continue to be implemented. We also suggested open house events. So what we meant by this is that the city can have an open house where they have a house where they present basically the ideal drought-proof or drought-resistant house with things like pool covers or the xeriscaping, and then future residents or current residents could see, what would this type of house be like? Do I want to live in this house? Do I want to be part of Goodyear who's going to be water conscious? And then also assess the vulnerabilities of different communities. So who has higher water use, which HOAs have higher water use, can identify where to target the strategies and policies for that. And so the fourth one then is implementation. So that would mean implementing these strategies and measures into actual codes and guidelines. So incrementally leading up to this, where they make it official into a code or guideline, as I said, which would be established by City Council, obviously. And then also we suggested the Star Communities rating system, which the city could use as a benchmark for measuring how sustainable it is in certain areas compared to other cities. The city of Peoria has already done it, which is another city in the West Valley. And it has different indicators for social components, environmental, so different indicators that the city could use. And also McKenna mentioned the Sustainable Design and Green Building Toolkit, which the city can also use. And then the fourth is just review and evaluation. So monitoring use, is use being decreased in areas where we implement these strategies, just viewing the strategies that we implement that are implemented and also how the Conservation Committee is working with the HOAs, what's working, what is not working. And then to conclude.
All right, so we hoped you enjoyed our presentation and found it informative and helpful. We wanted to reiterate that our goals here were to explore Goodyear's path to water security and drought preparedness by starting with small changes and to encourage a shift towards large-scale conservation behavior. And lastly, we hope we encouraged Goodyear to establish more sustainability goals beyond water. That is our presentation.
Thank you.